This plane doesn't carry dead people.
The cold voice cut through the noise of Terminal C, through the airport announcements and the rolling of suitcase wheels on the tiled floor. Beside the flag-draped casket, every sound suddenly flattened into bureaucracy. The counteragent spoke without daring to look up. According to regulations, it qualifies as bulky cargo. A manager circled nearby, counting minutes and on-time statistics, while the crowd lifted their phones in a dense, suffocating silence. Ramirez didn't need to raise his voice. This isn't cargo. This is a journey home. Deep in the handbook lay a clause the airline had forgotten. But he hadn't. And somewhere in that crowd, there would be one pair of eyes that didn't look away, and one decision that would force the entire system to choose between schedule and honor. A cold voice echoed through Terminal C, cutting through the airport announcements and hurried footsteps. "That flag doesn't change the rules, soldier." Each word sliced through the air like a blade. Before the flag-draped casket stood Honor Guard Sergeant Michael Ramirez, straight and unwavering, his white-gloved hands resting firmly on the cloth. Beneath it lay Staff Sergeant James Cooper, a man who had given his life saving 3 teammates in an IED blast in Afghanistan. He deserved to come home in honor, not as oversized luggage. Around them, Denver International Airport bustled as if no one had just fallen for their country. At the counter, Barbara Winters avoided Ramirez's eyes, her voice dry. "You'll have to check the casket, sir. It's considered bulky baggage." Ramirez replied slowly, but with iron in his tone. "This is not baggage. This is a soldier coming home." 4 hours earlier, at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, Ramirez had stood at attention under the cold white lights of a hangar. The casket arrived in silence, only the whisper of wind brushing the flag. "Specialist Ramirez," his commanding officer's voice carried across the hangar, "you're assigned to escort Sergeant Cooper to Arlington. His family specifically requested you." Ramirez merely nodded. They had trained together, not close, but close enough to call each other brothers in arms. He clenched his fist, knowing that from that moment, the living bore the sacred duty of bringing the fallen home, safely, completely. Now, beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of Gate C10, every authorization and document he carried suddenly felt meaningless. A group of passengers stood several meters away, keeping a respectful distance. Some lifted their phones to record. Winters looked down at her screen, her tone mechanical. "The system doesn't register any special handling code. I have to follow procedure." Ramirez carefully unfolded the military escort order. Trans-American Airlines Policy 22-7B clearly outlines procedures for the transport of fallen service members. Your airline confirmed this yesterday. Winters barely glanced at it. "I don't see a special handling tag." Ramirez clenched his jaw, switched on the voice recorder on his phone, then slipped it back into his pocket. He stayed silent, his eyes steady. A middle-aged man in the crowd stepped forward. "Let him do his duty. Show some respect for the fallen." Winters hesitated, avoiding the crowd's gaze, and picked up the phone. "I need assistance at Gate C10. Minutes later, Todd Phillips, customer service manager, arrived. Navy suit tailored to his broad shoulders, name badge gleaming. His voice carried the practiced warmth of a man long used to handling PR crises. "What seems to be the problem here?" Winters leaned slightly toward him, speaking low but loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's trying to bring bulky cargo onto the plane. Military or not, the policy forbids it." Phillips turned to Ramirez, extending a hand. "I understand your position, Sergeant, but our cargo regulations are very strict." Ramirez didn't shake it. His tone was deep, deliberate. "This is Staff Sergeant James Cooper. He died saving his comrades. I'm his escort. He is not cargo." Phillips's voice tightened. "The aircraft only has one compartment suitable for storage. It's climate-controlled." Ramirez lifted his chin. "It's not about climate. It's about dignity." He spoke louder, his voice resonating through the still air. "Your own policy, 22-7B states, remains of military personnel must be transported with honor, and the escort retains visual supervision throughout the journey. The entire gate area fell silent. A woman wearing an Air Force veteran cap nodded faintly. Someone whispered, "He knows their policy better than they do." Phillips swallowed hard, his face cooling. If such a policy exists, it must be pre-registered through the military liaison office. Ramirez pulled up an email on his phone. "Here, confirmation code MP7729FSP, Fallen Soldier Protocol." Phillips skimmed it. "That's a standard booking confirmation." "Scroll down," Ramirez said evenly. "Last line." Phillips paused. "If you continue to cause a disturbance, I'll have to call security." Ramirez didn't move. His voice was clear, unwavering. "I'm not causing a disturbance. I'm doing my duty. 17 soldiers I've escorted home. Not one was treated as cargo." The air seemed frozen. Phillips stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I understand, but we have a schedule to keep." Ramirez met his eyes. "This man gave his life for his country. The least we can do is let him return with honor." Phillips replied flatly, "The authority here rests with the airline, not the military." Ramirez inhaled deeply, shifting into parade rest, spine straight as steel. He looked taller now, though they stood eye to eye. "Sir," he said, each word striking the tile floor, "are you refusing to carry out the protocol for military remains?" Phillips answered, "I'm enforcing company policy." Ramirez nodded once. "Then I'll need your full name for my report to the Department of Defense and the Federal Aviation Administration." Silence. The boarding announcement echoed distantly, alien to the moment. All of Terminal C held its breath. One soldier stood amid a sea of strangers, his hand on the flag, fulfilling his duty. With dignity, with faith, and with the loneliness only those in uniform truly know. Phillips glanced around the gate. The crowd thicker now, dozens of phones raised. The glow of their screens lit his face. Tense, uneasy. "This is becoming a disruption," he said, voice straining for calm. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the area so other passengers can board." Ramirez didn't move. "I'm not leaving," he said slowly, each word as sharp and clear as a command. "I gave Sergeant Cooper's parents my word that I'd bring their son home with honor." Phillips lifted his radio. "Security to Gate C10, immediately." Behind the counter, a young airline employee who had been watching from the start shifted uneasily. Her name tag read Sarah Miller, customer advocate. When Ramirez glanced her way, she gave a faint shake of her head, a subtle signal, half warning, half silent plea. Ramirez stood his ground, one hand still resting on the flag-draped casket. "This is your final warning," Phillips said, irritation breaking through his professional tone. "Either it goes in the cargo hold, or you both miss the flight." Ramirez answered calmly, "Then we miss the flight." He looked Phillips squarely in the eye. "And I'll immediately contact the Cooper family, my commanding officer, and every major outlet in Denver, so they'll know that Trans-American Airlines refused to transport a fallen soldier with the minimum respect due to him." Phillips' radio crackled. 2 airport security officers appeared, and the crowd instinctively parted. "What's going on here?" the older officer asked. Phillips pointed. "This man refuses to comply with airline policy and is disturbing the boarding area." The officer looked at Ramirez, saw the uniform, the flag, and his expression softened. "Sir, can you tell me what's happening?" Phillips cut in quickly. "This is an internal airline matter. We have our procedures." Ramirez's reply was low, but it carried the weight of steel. "So does the United States Army, and when it comes to bringing home one of our own, those procedures deserve respect." The 2 security officers exchanged glances. The older one gave a slight nod. The younger stepped forward. "Sir, I understand, but we have to maintain order. Please come with us so we can sort this out." Ramirez shook his head. "I can't leave this post. I'm assigned to guard Sergeant Cooper. That's my duty." The older officer sighed. "Son, I served once too. I get it, but we still have to follow airport regulations." "Then Sergeant Cooper goes with me," Ramirez said firmly. Phillips interjected. his tone dry and clipped. "That container needs to be processed properly." Ramirez turned sharply. "That's a military casket, not a container, and the proper process is in your own company policy." The younger officer stepped closer. "Sir, please stand aside. If you don't, we'll have to take further action." Ramirez met his gaze. "That's not cargo. That's Staff Sergeant James Cooper, who gave his life saving 3 of his men." His voice began to tremble, not from fear, but from contained fury. The crowd behind them murmured. A few people stepped closer to Ramirez's side, saying nothing. Only standing there, a silent act of support. Phillips looked around, realizing the situation was slipping beyond control. He motioned sharply. "Take him to the office. I'll handle the rest." "No, absolutely not." Ramirez's eyes blazed. "We need to clear this gate," Phillips snapped. "We have a schedule." He gestured toward a new baggage crew arriving with a cart. "Move the casket to special handling." Ramirez's voice thundered, calm but commanding. "No one touches that casket." The crew froze, hesitating. The 2 security officers stepped up, each taking one of his arms. "Sir, please come with us. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Ramirez drew in a deep breath. He knew resistance now could delay Cooper's homecoming even further. His voice lowered. "I need to contact my commanding officer." "You'll be allowed to do that," said the older officer, his tone carrying quiet sympathy. They escorted him down the corridor. Over his shoulder, Ramirez watched the casket being wheeled away under the cold fluorescent lights. The American flag, small and fragile under the glare, seemed to shrink with every step. The airport security office was sterile and silent. A metal table, 3 chairs, walls lined with monitors. "Wait here," the younger officer said. "Someone will come speak with you." He locked the door. Ramirez pulled out his phone. No signal. He tried the door handle. Locked tight. Through the frosted glass, he could see a guard's silhouette standing watch. On the monitors, he spotted the baggage handling area. His heart sank. Cooper's casket was being pushed along a conveyor beside piles of ordinary suitcases. No ceremony, no honor. Just another piece of cargo. With every passing minute, the 8 a.m. funeral crept closer. He had promised Cooper's parents on his honor as a soldier. Now both promises were collapsing. After half an hour, Phillips entered, a file in hand, his face reset into practiced politeness. "Specialist Ramirez," he said. "I apologize for the inconvenience, but we have to maintain order. Where is Sergeant Cooper?" Ramirez's voice cut through his teeth. "Being prepared for transport under standard procedure," Phillips replied, "in the cargo hold." Phillips placed a document on the table. "You have 2 options," he said. 1. Take the next available flight and allow the casket to be shipped as cargo. 2. Arrange your own transportation." Ramirez looked down. It was a passenger conduct warning. "And if I refuse to separate from my soldier?" Phillips gave a polite smile that never reached his eyes. "Then, unfortunately, Trans-American will deny service to both of you. You have 30 minutes to decide." As Phillips left the room, Ramirez glanced at the monitor. Passengers at Gate C10 were already boarding. In one corner of the frame, he saw Sarah Miller, the young employee from before, quietly taking photos of documents on her tablet. 15 minutes later, the door opened softly. Sarah slipped inside, glanced around, and closed it behind her. "I don't have much time," she whispered. "They think I went to get coffee for the meeting. About you." Ramirez stood automatically at attention. "You're the employee from the gate." "Yes, and what they're doing is wrong," Sarah said, setting the tablet on the table. "I've worked here 5 years. I've never seen anyone quote Section 22(7)B as precisely as you did today." Ramirez looked at her, suspicion and hope flickering in his eyes. "You know about the fallen soldier protocol?" "I do now," Sarah replied, turning the screen toward him. "I checked the internal database. It's right here, just buried so deep no one ever notices it." On the screen, A highlighted policy section glowed. Trans-American Airlines shall provide dignified transport for fallen U.S. military personnel. Transfer cases containing remains shall remain under escort supervision throughout the journey, including boarding, flight, and deplaning processes. Ramirez read it, his fist tightening. Exactly what I said. Sarah nodded, her voice low but edged with anger. Phillips knows. He ignored it on purpose because it slows everything down, delays departures, hurts his on-time metrics. She stopped, inhaled. My husband served 2 tours in Iraq, she said softly, her voice catching. If something had happened to him, I'd want someone like you to bring him home. Ramirez's expression softened. Your husband. He made it back. We're divorced now. But that's not the point. Her voice steadied. The point is, I've seen this before. She opened another file. 3 similar complaints in the past year. All handled by Phillips, all buried. Here's one from Chicago last October. Same excuse. Oversized cargo. The escort that day didn't know the policy like you do. Her throat tightened, and he walked away in silence. Sarah's gaze stayed on the screen. The remains were loaded into the cargo hold. The escort filed a complaint, and Phillips buried it with a service voucher and a non-disclosure agreement. Ramirez's pupils narrowed. He's done this before. 3 times that I could find, Sarah said, checking her watch. We don't have much time. Your flight leaves in 50 minutes. They've started boarding. I have to get back to Sergeant Cooper, Ramirez said, straightening his jacket, fingers brushing the edge of his white glove. They moved the casket to the special handling area near Gate C10, Sarah replied. Not the regular cargo bay. The confrontation at the gate must have forced them to follow part of the protocol. Then my next step is to get out of this room. That's the problem, Sarah whispered. Phillips ordered security to keep you here until the plane takes off. She hesitated, leaning closer, as if the walls themselves might be listening. But someone above Phillips needs to see this. And fast. Who? Elaine Foster, Regional Director. She's here at the airport today for a quarterly meeting. A spark of hope lit in Ramirez's eyes. Can you reach her? I'll try. She doesn't know me, but if this blows up, it'll be a PR nightmare. Sarah paused. There's something else. She opened a security camera clip. 2 baggage handlers pushing the flag-draped transfer case, chatting and laughing. One pretended to stumble, joking as they went. Not intentional disrespect, but the thoughtlessness hit like a punch. Ramirez's face hardened. They don't know who's in there. No, they don't, Sarah said quietly, stopping the video. This alone would ignite public outrage if it got out. I don't want outrage, Ramirez said, his voice low. I just want Sergeant Cooper treated with the respect he earned. That's why I'm here. Sarah took out her phone. I'll call Director Foster. She needs to see the policy violation and this footage. But I need something from you, your escort orders, and all official correspondence with the airline. Ramirez pulled a folded bundle from his chest pocket. Authorization papers, escort orders, confirmation emails, all official. Sarah took them, her hands steady though she knew the risk towering before her. Phillips doesn't know I have access to internal complaint records or security feeds. I could lose my job. Why do it anyway? Sarah looked up, eyes clear and resolute. Because some things matter more than a job. Some promises have to be kept. Sergeant Cooper's parents are waiting, Ramirez said quietly. He was their only child. I'll do everything I can, Sarah said, gathering the papers. Try your phone again in 5 minutes. The room blocks signals, but the door glitches sometimes when it opens. Thank you, Ramirez said. The words felt too small for what she was risking. Sarah's hand lingered on the door handle. Crowds are forming at the customer service desk. Word about the gate incident is spreading. I don't want a scene. Sometimes, she said softly, a scene is the only way to make things right. The door closed behind her, quiet as a promise. Alone, Ramirez paced the small room. On the wall of monitors, travelers continued to pass by, indifferent to the fallen soldier resting among them. He checked his watch. The second hand seemed to move slower on purpose, as if to mock him. Then, suddenly, his phone caught a weak signal, just as Sarah had said. He immediately dialed his commanding officer. "Major Reynolds speaking. Sir, Specialist Ramirez, there's a problem with the transport of Sergeant Cooper." He delivered a concise report, every word clipped and formal, though fire burned behind the control in his voice. "What?" The major's tone hardened. "Hold your position, Ramirez. I'm contacting Transamerican's military liaison now. Check your email. I'm sending supporting documents. Show them to anyone necessary." "Yes, sir." "And one more thing. A news crew at Joint Base Andrews is scheduled to record Cooper's arrival. His unit gained attention after that last mission. If he doesn't arrive on time—" "Yes, sir." He didn't need the rest. One incident could become a national story. Through the frosted window, Ramirez saw Sarah speaking with a sharply dressed older woman, straight posture, serious eyes. Elaine Foster, without a doubt. When Sarah handed her the tablet, Foster's expression shifted from polite indifference to genuine alarm. The wall clock read 4:23 p.m. The flight was due to depart at 5:15. The funeral at Arlington was scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning. Ramirez calculated every passing minute meant one less promise kept. The next flight wouldn't arrive until late morning. Too late. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Foster reviewing documents. Stand by. S." On the security feed, the confrontation unfolded like a tightening wire. Foster turned page after page, her face darkening. Philip stood beside her, his corporate smile faltering as she raised the tablet and pointed directly to the policy clause. Then, the phone rang again. Major Reynolds. "Ramirez, command is aware of the situation. The airline's military liaison is handling it. The documents I sent will back you up." "Yes, sir. Andrews has media waiting. Don't let this become a disgrace." "Understood." The door opened. The older security officer stepped in, his face conflicted. "Specialist, the regional director wants to see you, and Staff Sergeant Cooper's casket is being held at Gate C10. Ramirez strode quickly through the terminal, each step like the beat of a drum line. Passengers moved aside. Some nodded quietly at the uniform on his shoulders. At Gate C10, he spotted the flag-draped transfer case. Intact, no longer buried among anonymous luggage. His phone vibrated again. "Director Foster will arrive in 20 minutes. Can you hold position?" S. Ramirez stood beside the casket, returning to his post. One white-gloved hand rested lightly on the flag. His eyes did not waver. In the distance, Phillips argued with another manager, gesturing toward Ramirez. A message from Major Reynolds appeared on screen. "High Command is monitoring this case. Keep your phone on." On the departure board, Flight 1829 to Washington, D.C. changed from boarding to final call. The clock's hands tightened like blades. Sarah appeared beside him, speaking quickly but keeping her tone low. "They're trying to push for on-time departure. Foster's reviewing everything, but Phillips is insisting on schedule compliance." "Where should Cooper's casket be right now?" Ramirez asked. "They plan to move it to the general cargo bay. We need to stop that immediately." Sarah pointed toward two baggage handlers approaching with a cart. Foster ordered it held here, but Phillips countermanded her. Ramirez stepped forward, positioning himself between the cart and the casket. "The remains of a fallen soldier are, in this case, under my direct supervision by order of the United States Army. No one approaches without authorization." The handlers froze, glancing toward their supervisor. His radio crackled with Philip's voice. "Proceed as instructed." Ramirez didn't move. The air grew heavy, charged like the seconds before a storm. "Check your phones," Sarah said loudly enough for all to hear. "Transamerican's treatment of a fallen soldier is trending right now on social media." The supervisor looked at his screen, then at the flag. He took a deep breath, made his decision. "Hold position. Await further instruction. He stepped back, furiously dialing on his device. At 5:05 p.m., Elaine Foster arrived. The sharp rhythm of her heels commanded the entire area to silence. 2 assistants followed. Behind them, Phillips's face was frozen into a brittle smile. "Specialist Ramirez," Foster said, her tone firm but composed. "I'm Elaine Foster, Regional Director for Trans-American Airlines. I've been briefed on your escort assignment." "Ma'am," Ramirez replied, standing at parade rest, every crease in his uniforms precise as steel. "I am escorting Staff Sergeant James Cooper home to his family. Your staff refused to honor the fallen soldier protocol, a policy that belongs to this airline." Foster's eyes swept over the flag, pausing just long enough for the weight of the moment to settle into the air. "Just as I was briefed," she said quietly, giving a small nod. "We should discuss this in a more appropriate setting." "With respect, ma'am," Ramirez replied, unmoving. "I cannot leave Staff Sergeant Cooper unattended." Something softened in Foster's expression, as if, amid all the KPIs and flight schedules, she had just touched the very thing those policies were meant to protect. She turned to her team. "Stop all handling operations related to this transfer case. Call in airport security, ground operations management, the airline's military liaison, and airport administration. I want an honor cart, a local honor guard if available, and the boarding gate reopened until this protocol is carried out properly." Phillips opened his mouth, then closed it again. Foster continued, her tone sharp and authoritative. "Section 22-7B. Execute immediately. The escort will maintain continuous visual supervision during boarding, flight, and deplaning. Absolute priority over standard cargo." She met Ramirez's eyes. "Specialist, you will accompany Staff Sergeant Cooper from this moment until the aircraft lands in Washington, D.C. Beside him, Sarah exhaled in relief, her eyes glimmering, proud. Ramirez placed his hand gently on the flag and nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." In the distance, the crowd fell completely silent. Then one person placed a hand over their heart, another, a third. Within moments, the entire area before Gate C10 had transformed into a silent honor corridor. No applause, no shouts, only reverence. Ramirez turned to Sarah and whispered, "You kept a promise, not to me, but to Cooper's parents." Sarah nodded. "And now you'll keep the other one." Foster gestured toward the operations crew. They brought forward the ceremonial cart. No more talk of schedules, no more words like oversized baggage. Only the flag, and the straight path leading to the open aircraft door. Ramirez walked beside the casket, his footsteps even, steady. With each one, he felt as though he were carrying the weight of a vow. At the end of the jet bridge, the aircraft door stood open. Flight 1829 shifted from final call to on hold. Special handling. This time, the schedule bowed to dignity. A faint trace of respect flickered in Elaine Foster's eyes. "Of course," she said. "We'll use the private lounge next to this gate." She turned to her assistant. "Ensure Sergeant Cooper's casket remains undisturbed and is treated with full honors." The assistant nodded and stood guard beside the flag. Inside the private lounge, the air felt dense, compressed with tension. Foster sat in the center, her voice sharp and measured. "I've reviewed the documents Ms. Miller provided. Mr. Phillips, would you care to explain why you denied boarding under policy 22-7B? Phillips straightened, struggling to maintain composure. "Director, I was simply following standard oversized cargo procedures. The policy Ms. Miller referenced is outdated. It's no longer applicable." Foster rotated the tablet toward him, her tone turning cold. "Actually, 22-7B was updated last quarter. It's still fully active, and emphasized in our partnership guidelines with the Department of Defense." Phillips faltered. I wasn't aware. We have thousands of policies. And you didn't verify before making your decision?" Foster cut in, her eyes like a blade. He swallowed hard. "In that situation, I prioritize the schedule and standard operations." "In that situation," Foster repeated, every syllable a sentence. You chose punctuality over principle. She turned to Ramirez. Specialist, on behalf of Trans-American Airlines, I owe you an apology. Your military transport authorization is completely valid. May I ask, how do you know this procedure so well? Ramirez replied, before joining the Honor Guard, I served 3 years with the Judge Advocate General's Corps, specializing in transport regulations. I helped draft the military section of this protocol. The room went utterly still. Phillips's face drained of color. Sarah pressed her lips together, hiding a faint smile. That explains it, Foster said evenly, her voice calm but edged with steel. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, her expression tightening. Headquarters is fielding media inquiries, she said briskly. Social media, Sarah added softly. Passengers posted videos from the gate. Foster nodded. Then we resolve this now. What's the current status of the Washington flight? Phillips answered. Final boarding, 7 minutes before door close. Hold the door, Foster ordered. Prepare for full honors boarding for Sergeant Cooper, escorted by Specialist Ramirez. Phillips protested. That'll delay us at least 15 minutes. Then we'll be 15 minutes late, Foster snapped. This isn't just a flight. It's a matter of honor. Ramirez's phone buzzed again, an email from Major Reynolds. Ma'am, he said, my commanding officer just sent additional documentation from the Military Transport Command, including confirmation from Trans-American's military liaison yesterday. He handed her the screen. Foster scanned it, then looked sharply at Phillips. This authorization was already in the system, officially verified. And you claimed a computer error? Phillips stammered. It must have been a technical issue. Ms. Miller, Foster turned. How many similar cases has Mr. Phillips handled? 3 this year, ma'am, Sarah replied. All involving fallen service members. All denied proper protocol, and all quietly buried with compensation and non-disclosure agreements. The conference room fell into silence. Foster looked down at the table for several long seconds, then lifted her gaze. Specialist Ramirez, she said, her tone deliberate and formal. On behalf of Trans-American Airlines, I offer our sincere apology. The company will immediately arrange a full honor ceremony. You and Staff Sergeant Cooper will travel with complete dignity. Ramirez nodded, his voice steady but with a note of quiet relief. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Phillips, Foster continued, her voice cold as steel, will personally oversee the honor ceremony, according to the very protocol he somehow forgot. Then she turned to Sarah. Ms. Miller, you'll accompany them. Make sure every step follows company policy. As they prepared to leave, Foster called out again. Specialist, may I ask, what gave you the courage to stand your ground against my staff, knowing the risks? Ramirez paused. Ma'am, this isn't just another flight. He raised his head, his eyes unwavering. It's a promise. To the man who gave his life, to his family, and to every soldier who ever left home not knowing if they'd return. Foster nodded slowly. Then, bring him home. Gate C10 was utterly still as the escort procession emerged. The 2 baggage handlers now wore white gloves, the kind used for ceremonial honors. They pushed the flag-draped casket with solemn care. At the front of the line walked Phillips, his steps those of a man carrying the weight of guilt. The loudspeaker crackled to life, this time with reverence. Trans-American Airlines is honored to announce that today, we have the privilege of escorting a fallen American hero. We ask all passengers for patience and respect during this special honor procedure. The entire terminal stood. An elderly man removed his cap. A young woman placed her hand over her heart. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve and whispered, Mom, who's that? The mother knelt and answered softly, Someone who protected your freedom. At the aircraft door, the flight crew stood at attention. The captain stepped forward and saluted. Specialist, it's an honor for us. We've prepared the forward compartment with secured tie-downs. You may inspect them at any time. Thank you, sir, Ramirez replied, returning the salute. He checked each latch, each strap, then nodded in approval. "We'll depart as soon as you're ready," the captain said. "The passengers have been informed of today's mission of honor." Foster approached. "Everything satisfactory?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. One small matter, an internal formality." She handed him a folder. "We'll need you to sign this non-disclosure agreement before takeoff. Standard procedure after an incident resolution." Ramirez took the file but didn't open it immediately. "Thank you, ma'am. But my duty isn't complete until Sergeant Cooper is home." "Of course." Foster smiled, the poised smile of someone who had regained control. "You can sign after landing if you prefer. What happened today is best kept internal." He sat near the forward cargo compartment. Passengers nodded respectfully as they passed. The unopened folder rested on his lap. Through the window, he saw Phillips speaking tensely with Foster, gesturing toward the plane. For the first time all day, Ramirez allowed his shoulders to relax. Cooper was on his way home. The mission was almost complete. Then his eyes froze on the faint printed words on the folder's cover. Confidential Resolution Agreement. Non-disclosure. "Sir," a flight attendant said softly, "Director Foster requests that you come back to the jetway for just a minute to sign the document before departure." Ramirez glanced at his watch. They were already 20 minutes late. Every minute was a promise slipping away. "Can't it wait until after landing?" "She said it needs to be done now, sir. It'll only take a minute." He stepped out into the jetway. Foster waited there with Phillips and a man wearing a legal department badge. Foster opened the file and handed him a pen. "We just need your signature. Routine paperwork." Ramirez took the file and began reading carefully. Dense legal phrasing. And in the middle, one line cold as iron. "The signer agrees not to disclose any information regarding the incident to any individual, media organization, or government representative." Ramirez looked up, eyes blazing. "This clause forbids me from reporting today's events to my commanding officers or to Sergeant Cooper's family." The lawyer replied smoothly, "Standard language, sir. All matters are handled internally." Ramirez closed the folder. Unsigned. In his eyes burned a light of anger, but also of unshakable conviction. "In return, Trans-American will offer flight privileges and a voucher," the lawyer added gently. "I don't need compensation," Ramirez said, setting the papers down. "I just need to make sure this never happens again, to any soldier." He pushed the folder back toward them, his voice resolute. "I can't sign this. My duty is to report fully to my chain of command." Foster's professional smile hardened. "Then I'm afraid we have a problem. Our transport agreement includes closure of the case." "The transport agreement is based on your own company policy and federal regulations," Ramirez replied. "It doesn't depend on my silence." Phillips stepped halfway forward, his tone low. "Perhaps you don't understand the context. This is a courtesy the airline is extending to you." "No, sir," Ramirez said, standing taller, his voice firm. "I understand perfectly. You denied a fallen soldier his honor protocol. When confronted with your own policy, you tried to keep me detained until the flight departed. And when that failed, you tried to buy my silence with legal paperwork and vouchers." Foster's eyes narrowed. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation," Ramirez replied evenly. "It's a documented fact." Ramirez unlocked his phone and tapped the screen. The jetway fell silent. The recording played. The dry refusals at the gate, the clipped voices, the arrival of Phillips, every layer resurfacing, undeniable. "Colorado law allows one-party consent," Ramirez said evenly when it ended. "I'm that party, and if any of you regularly review customer interaction statutes, you'd know that." Foster's hand tightened on her briefcase strap. "One recording doesn't establish a pattern." "You're right," Ramirez nodded. "But this does." He sent another file. Foster's phone pinged. The security camera footage appeared. 2 baggage handlers pushing the flag-draped transfer case, laughing casually. Her eyes widened, then darkened. "Miller gave you that?" Phillips snapped, agitated. "She had no authority." She had full authority as a customer advocate to document misconduct. Ramirez cut in. And access to the database showing 3 similar cases you handled, all buried under NDAs and payouts. The lawyer cleared his throat. Director Foster, perhaps we should speak privately. It's too late for private, Ramirez said quietly. He forwarded one last email. This is my drafted report to command, copied to the Department of Defense Liaison Office, the FAA, and 3 National Military Affairs desks. It includes today's audio, video, and documentation. The jetway went still again. Foster looked down at her phone, scrolling through the evidence, her jaw tightening. You wouldn't dare, Phillips said, trying to recover ground. Your career. My career, Ramirez replied calmly, is to uphold my oath and complete my mission with integrity. Staff Sergeant Cooper died saving his men. He didn't abandon his post. Neither will I. This could be interpreted as a threat, the lawyer warned. No, sir, it's accountability. The data's already backed up to my command server. I'm giving you the opportunity to make this right before it becomes part of the public record. Foster drew a slow breath, measuring. What exactly are you proposing? Ramirez laid it out, each point like a field order. 1. Sergeant Cooper continues on today's flight with full honors. 2. Trans-American reviews and retrains all personnel on the fallen soldier protocol. 3. Reopen the 3 buried complaints and handle them transparently. 4. No disciplinary action against Ms. Sarah Miller. She upheld your company's stated values. And the recording, Phillips pressed. It's part of the official report, non-negotiable. Foster looked from Phillips to Ramirez. The calculation in her eyes was clear. Media crisis or meaningful reform. Mr. Phillips, return to the terminal, she said at last. We'll discuss your handling of this tomorrow. Phillips's mouth opened, then closed. His footsteps dragged away down the corridor. Facing Ramirez again, Foster said, I accept your conditions, with one caveat. Trans-American needs to conduct an internal review before any public statement. Fair, Ramirez nodded. My report will reflect that cooperation once it's elevated through proper channels. The tension in the jetway eased. The company lawyer closed the folder, silent. One more thing, Ramirez said. Where is Ms. Miller? Outside the terminal, Foster replied. She was afraid of being caught in the crossfire. I'd like to thank her before we depart. A flight attendant nodded and stepped away to make the call. Minutes later, Sarah appeared at the far end of the jetway. You're still here? She exhaled. I thought they'd make you sign something. They tried, Ramirez said, smiling for the first time that day. But your evidence couldn't be ignored. Sarah straightened, addressing Foster directly. Director, I acted within my role as a customer advocate. The violation was clear and documented. That's correct, Foster said, nodding. Your actions will be included in our improvement process, not disciplinary review. Sarah's shoulders lowered slightly. Part relief, part pride. Thank you, Ramirez said quietly. Sergeant Cooper is going home because you didn't look away. The captain appeared at the aircraft door. We need to depart to hold our slot into Reagan National. Of course, Foster said, then turned to Ramirez. Is there anything else Staff Sergeant Cooper requires for his journey? That question, the first to treat him as a person, not a shipment, did not escape Ramirez's notice. No, ma'am, just respect and dignity. In the end, that's all any of us ask for. When Ramirez returned to the cabin, the waiting passengers rose silently. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Thank you for your patience. Today, we have the honor of bringing an American hero home. Estimated arrival at Reagan National, 8:42 p.m. Ramirez sat down, letting the weight of the long day settle, and, finally, lift. His phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. Wishing you both a safe journey. Through the window, he saw Foster on the tarmac, phone to her ear, already beginning the internal reckoning. The aircraft pushed back. The aisle lights glowed warm. Ramirez rested his hand over his breast pocket, where the escort orders lay. His eyes turned forward, toward the family waiting in the east. The mission continued. But today's hardest battle had been won, not with force, but with knowledge, preparation, and the courage to do what was right, even when standing alone. When the plane touched down at Reagan National ahead of schedule, the captain's voice carried over the cabin once more, deep and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we have completed a sacred duty together. Please remain seated to allow Specialist Ramirez and Staff Sergeant James Cooper to disembark first." The door opened. Inside the jetway stood a full U.S. Army Honor Guard, uniforms pressed, formation precise, waiting to receive one of their own. The sight caught Ramirez off guard, tightening his chest. "Specialist Ramirez," the commander saluted. "We're here to escort Staff Sergeant Cooper on his final leg home." "Thank you," Ramirez replied, returning the salute. The ground crew had prepared the ceremonial transport vehicle. As the flag-draped transfer case was brought out, the entire flight crew stood at attention. Passengers by the windows watched in silence, some placing hands over their hearts, a few veterans quietly saluting. On the tarmac, the honor guard received the casket with solemn precision, each movement deliberate, each step a silent vow. They secured it gently inside the transport vehicle, every gesture carrying purpose. Ramirez's phone buzzed. Major Reynolds. "Well done, Ramirez. Cooper's parents are waiting at Dover. The ceremony will proceed as planned." "Yes, sir. We'll be there." "I heard there was some turbulence with the airline." "It's been resolved, sir. I'll file a full report." "Good." The Army Secretary's office just called. The airline's CEO reached out personally regarding their military transport policy. "You've started a much-needed ripple." "Just doing my duty, sir." "Keep doing it. See you at Dover." The convoy began to roll. For a few rare minutes, the airport paused, surrendering its rhythm to human dignity. From beyond the security fence, a news crew filmed discreetly. A message from Sarah appeared. Statement from the CEO released. Transamerican acknowledges its failure to honor a fallen service member. Effective immediately, all staff will undergo retraining on the military transport protocol to ensure the utmost respect and dignity. Another message followed. Phillips reassigned to Freight Division. I've been appointed to lead the new military family support program. Thank you for standing your ground. Staff Sergeant Cooper's casket was secured inside the hearse. Ramirez took his escort position for the journey to Dover Air Force Base, where the official transfer of remains would take place at dawn. As the convoy left the terminal, he reflected on the day's battle. One fought without weapons, but honorable all the same. Because systems only function with decency when people within them choose to stand up. Morning in Dover was clear, cool, and solemn. Cooper's parents stood tall, his father, a veteran himself, wearing his old ribbons, his mother clutching her son's photograph. A fresh flag was placed over the casket. The synchronized steps of the honor guard echoed across the tarmac. After the ceremony, as the family prepared for the Arlington burial, Mrs. Cooper took Ramirez's hand. "Thank you for bringing our son home." "It was my honor, ma'am." Mr. Cooper nodded. "We heard you had to fight to make sure Jimmy was respected." "No differently than what he did, sir," Ramirez said, standing at parade rest. Staff Sergeant Cooper never left his post. Neither did I. Mrs. Cooper's hand tightened around his white glove. "Today, we honor not only James Cooper, but the promise that every hero will be brought home." The funeral convoy entered Arlington National Cemetery right on time. The sound of the ceremonial carriage wheels, the soft crackle of the flag in the wind, and the endless rows of white headstones formed the quiet script of national memory. When the bugle's final note rose into the air, Ramirez stood perfectly still. He understood. His battle was small compared to Cooper's sacrifice, but it mattered. To the Coopers, to Sarah, to every passenger who had witnessed, and to every soldier who might one day take this same journey. As he left Arlington, an email arrived from Transamerican headquarters. Subject: Implementation of the Cooper Protocol. Content: mandatory honor procedures for the transport of fallen service members, continuous visual escort rights, comprehensive staff retraining, establishment of a military family support division, directed by Sarah Miller, based in Arlington. 2 weeks later, Ramirez received a new escort assignment. At the airport, staff followed the new protocol flawlessly. The moment they saw the uniform and orders, the Cooper protocol activated automatically. As he took his seat, his phone buzzed again. Sarah. 4 other airlines just announced adoption of the same policy after your story spread. Some rules matter most when they protect our humanity. Ramirez looked out the window as the plane climbed through the clouds. Systems fail when good people stay silent. Systems heal when good people stand up. Staff Sergeant James Cooper had stood up in Afghanistan and paid the ultimate price. The least Ramirez could do was stand up for him on the way home. Mission complete. Amid the cold machinery of schedules and procedures, there are still those who choose to do what's right, even if it means standing still in a crowd and saying no. Specialist Ramirez didn't win through power, but through dignity. He kept a promise to bring a fallen soldier home with honor. While some chose convenience, he chose integrity. While others followed policy, he followed conscience. And in that moment, the system that seemed heartless bowed to humanity. Because justice isn't just words in a manual. It's how we treat one another when no one's watching. If it were you, would you have the courage to stand up for what's right, even if you stood alone? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories of integrity, courage, and the quiet power of doing what's right.